Okay, so in terms of collaboration within the Office 365 platform, I think the first place to start would be in Teams, and I think that really over the last few weeks, we've really seen how it's all come together in the team that we've all been a member of. So just a bit of a quick recap on Teams. So you have in Teams individual teams that you're a member of, and these can be anything from the team that you work day to day in, project teams, anything around sort of like the collaboration teams for improving morale, special things you might be working on, or common interests that you might have. And then in each of the teams, you've got the channels, and the channels, you always get that general channel by default, and then you get the channels that help group the topic of conversation. And again, the types of channels that you have depend on what the team's purpose is. Sometimes you might be just perfectly fine with the general channel. Other times you might only need one or two extra channels, and in other times you might need a plethora of different things there to kind of keep that, conversation within the team, but spread out so the right focus can be given to the right pieces. And I think just a bit of a recap as well. So there's sometimes it can be overwhelming the number of channels that exist within a team, but you individually are in control of which channels that you get to see. So if you don't need to see that channel day to day, you can click on the little ellipsis menu and you can choose to hide that channel. And what that will do is it will move it down to the hidden channel section for that team. You'll still get any notifications for any tags that you get. So if somebody was to tag @Grant, I'd get that notification. If somebody was to tag the team, again, you'd get that notification. But if somebody was to tag the channel, you wouldn't get that notification because you have chosen to hide it. You're saying that channel's not relevant to me. So that's one of the things to point out. So you can hide as many channels as you want and just be left with the general. You can't hide the general channel. And then if you change your mind and you want to have that channel visible again, just click on the hidden channels and then come across here against that, and you can choose to show that particular channel, and you'll see that. Any channels that you work with quite a lot, you might want to pin to the top. So let's use this separations one. So on the ellipsis menu, if I choose pin, the channel stays here. As you can see, it's still here as it was, but at the top here, I've got these pinned channels. They were called favorites previously, but I think they've changed the terminology to their pinned channels. So up here, I've got all the pinned ones, and they appear in the order of when you pin them, so oldest thing to the bottom. And then again, once you need to no longer have that channel pinned, it's just a kind of a quick shortcut to get to it. You can choose to unpin that channel. And then when you're in a channel, you've got the let me just change my view to the more traditional white default because I think it's a little bit easier to show that on these. You get the conversation. So that's the conversation, the new message that somebody starts, and then you get the replies to those. So I'm going to labour the point a little bit. Make sure that if you want to reply to that particular message, that you do use the reply button for that conversation to keep it all together. So at a later date, if you need to find anything in that thread, it's easy to find because it's there. If there's this message down here from Catherine, sometimes the view can be a bit misleading because it can sort of look a little bit like this, where it's hidden that reply, and you're in automatic mode, you're whizzing through all your different channels, and you start to type something in here. So you might say, thanks, Catherine, for that. Really struggling with typing today. And then press that in, and it's automatically tagged Catherine on that, but that's now a separate conversation. And so if we ever need to look at that bit of detail, they're in separate bits. So if I've noticed that, I can just copy that into here, put the message there, and then I can come along, and on this original message I've sent, you've got the options, the ellipsis menu up there where you react to it, and I can delete that message. And then, I've got the option to undo, but now nobody else can see that message. It's been deleted. Any replies that were there would still be there, and they can be deleted as well. And sometimes, it's helpful to remind people that they've done that. So sometimes if, my message was there wrong, somebody could just pop a little gentle reply saying, oh, I think this, I think this should be a reply to another message. Would you mind moving it to that? So we just got to keep that trail. And if that message is a bit further up in the trail and it's a bit difficult, you can always grab a link to that message. So again, where you've got the reactions, you've got the options for that message, and you can copy a link to that message. So you can always say, you can paste that in here, and it will put that link in so people can click it. So it's a bit useful way to help people navigate around, because there can be lots of conversations in channels. So that was kind of just bringing, a bit of a refresh on how a team's made up. And then you are going to be working on certain files and data, and maybe visiting certain websites quite often as part of your team. And a good way to kind of help improve that speed of access, that collaboration, is you can add tabs at the top. So you can add a tab, and you get your standard tabs that you can choose from for the various Office and Microsoft tools, and then there's more tabs you can add in for additional applications and services that have integration with Teams. And you can add more and more. If the ones that you're looking for don't appear here, it's perhaps because they haven't been added to that team, and you'd need to go and find it in the sort of the App Store, and it's a bit grayed out, but down here, and you can add that into your team. So, for example, if I want to say, as a particular Excel document that we are working on, you could choose Excel, and you can give the name for that particular tab. So let's call this the IBM sheet. And then if I come down to the key documents here, I could choose one of these files. Let's just choose this IBM one. I'm not going to post the channel. Click Save. And then that's then created a view for that particular sheet. So it's really easy to get to. So now when you're working on this, instead of clicking on files and then navigating through the folder structure to find that file and then clicking open to get this view, you can just, it's up here, it's kind of a quick shortcut. And when you're working on them, you can expand the tab, and you get that kind of larger view. And then you can just quickly drop back into the conversations to see any information you've got on here. And you could just click back into that particular spreadsheet that you've added in. Takes that, because it's opening it up in that edit view. So it just takes a few seconds to load up. But it's a bit quicker than files, navigating through, etc. And you can do that for, pretty much all of the documents that exist, and websites as well. So perhaps your team needs to keep up to date with things that are going on. You can have any web page appear up in the Teams tabs. So just choosing that, add a tab, choosing website, and I can paste, give that a name, paste that URL in. I'm going to uncheck this because I don't want to create a post in the channel about it, and then save that. And then we now get that tab, and you can easily get to that website. And that's that tab is individual to each user of the team. So if it requires a sign-in, it doesn't cache the sign-in for across the team. It's your own individual sign-in that it's using. So that's really useful as well. So things like Jira, Confluence, any of the Atlassian tools you might be using. Again, you can have that quick tab to jump into there. So you've not had to leave Teams. You can quickly get in there. It will save your details and log in. We've even had people in the past, I'm just going to remove that, just click on that arrow. They wanted their email to be visible from here within Teams. So you could add a tab that's a website to the online mail portal for email. And again, it's unique to each person, so you can safely and securely access that information. So that's kind of just keeping things a bit quicker and helping to collaborate. Just remove this one as well. So I'm just clicking on it, getting the drop down.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
if you added your email to the team, would every member of the team be able to see it?
No, so what you'd do is you'd add the sign-in page for that tab, and then you would sign in,
Right.
and
Okay.
it's a unique session for you that it's got.
Okay.
Good question though, because that has come up before.
You're welcome.
So that's kind of a quick way, and the more things that you need. If I just jump back to one of the other teams, there will be a limit on the number of tabs, but you probably will run out of things, and it will put them on here. All these different ones we've got up here, and then once you kind of reach the limit that it can display at the top, you just get a drop down that you can quickly jump across to on those. Let's come back here. So I think we're all pretty used to working on a file in Teams. So any file that's uploaded into the team, we can jump into. So let's just jump in here. And this is effectively, it's a web view essentially, isn't it? It's the edit online view, but within the Teams browser. So, I can come in here and I can start moving around and making edits. If somebody else was in the file at the same time, they would appear in the file and I could see where their cursor was and what edits they were working on. You get some, most of the functionality for the application you're in. There are some features that don't work fully in the web view. You need to open it up in the desktop version, but you can have a conversation at the same time. So if you're in here and you want to have a conversation about this file, you click on the conversation tab up there and it opens a chat bar on the right hand side, and you can start chatting about this file, and you can chat with anybody in the team about that file. They don't have to be in the file at the same time, because it creates a entry in the channel and allows everybody in the team to see that information. So previously, Hazel wanted to know where this file was. So I opened the file, went to conversation, and just tagged Hazel, so Hazel could then see that file because it created an entry on there. So that's a good way of keeping in touch with people about that particular file. The other thing you can do is you can comment. So if you've ever used the review functions and do commenting on files, they've added a bit of a shortcut button up here, so you can comment. So wherever you've got your selection, either in Excel on that particular cell or where the cursor is in PowerPoint or Word, you can add a comment, and basically it will start the track changes type stuff. So you can do a new comment. I can add that in here, so I can just start, I can add something in here like pending information, or I could @ somebody. So I could @ somebody on the team, to say, Paula, can you check this? And then if I was to press send, Paula would get an email notification that I've added a comment to a particular document. And then Paula can open that link from the email and it will take her directly to the area of the document where that comment is. And then Paula can add a reply here to say, yeah, no worries, I'll work on that, get that information, it's completed, and then you can mark the comment as complete in your review and track changes elements. But again, that's a really good way that you can now start tagging people in the comments to help really pinpoint where you need help from people in completing that work. So I'll just cancel that comment on there. And that's pretty much how to do the collaboration stuff. There are a few things, known issues that kind of prevent collaboration. I think we're all very much aware of within Excel. If you filter a column to something, it filters it for everybody in that file. So try not to filter that information when other people are in the file, unless you've kind of agreed to look at the same stuff, because otherwise it just stops people from being able to work on that file. And especially if you're filtering and people don't know that you're in there or it's filtered, sometimes people can think they're in the right place and editing the right information, and it could be incorrectly edited. So that's just one thing to bear in mind, the filtering. So that's kind of just a bit of a recap on Teams and how to be sort of a bit more effective in Teams on editing files and adding tabs and having conversations about files. And then I'm now going to jump over to office.com. So all I've done is opened a browser, logged into office.com, and this sort of homepage, I think a lot of us don't spend much time looking at. We kind of log in here to get to the one thing that we want to get to. But there's actually quite a bit of information on this screen already. So first of all, the most used things that you use are at the top from your applications. It then gives you some documents that perhaps you need to be aware of, or you might want to be looking at. Similar to how we talked about stuff in Delve, it's recommending things based on what you're working on, who you're working with, and what's trending and what's popular in your organization. But also it shows the recent documents that you've been working on. So you can quickly jump into these. You can see the status of that particular file, if it's got any sharing on it, and if anybody else has been working on that file, it might say that the file was recently edited by somebody else. And if there's a particular file that you always want to have access to, but perhaps don't edit frequently, maybe it's a monthly sort of tracker, you can pin. So just add to pinned. It will then pin that file. And then in your pinned section, that particular file will stay there. And then you can unpin it by just choosing that option to turn it off. And if you've started working on a document on your desktop, naughty, but you then want to, put it up into the cloud and you want to, collaborate with somebody, you can just use this upload and open option here. So if you choose upload and open, navigate to the file that you've been working on. So here's one I made earlier. So that's now going to upload that onto my OneDrive for me, and then it'll open the file ready for me to start working on. So once I've got my file open, it's automatically saving when you're in the online view. If I open it up as well in the desktop app, so I'm on the O365 desktop app. Now this is the version that's saved to my local machine, so I want to be careful and not use that one. That's the first thing to check actually, because I forgot. So this local version I need to remove because I've put that into the cloud now, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to open the file from my OneDrive. So it's, let me see if I can find that file. No, you know what, let's just do it the quick way. I'm going to open in the desktop app. So once that's opened up in the desktop app, what I was going to point out is make sure that you've got Autosave turned on up here in the top left. So you need to have this saved onto a cloud storage device, so OneDrive. And when you've got that turned on, it saves it into the cloud and it automatically turns on version history for you. And it's pretty much doing as it says. It's auto-saving like the online version. Every change that I make within the document, it's automatically updating for me and it's saving. So now you can see the file is automatically being saved and it's going to version control that. It doesn't version control every minute detail that I make, but it kind of chunks them into sessions. So as long as I'm active in the file and keep doing these changes, it will treat that as one session for that version. So if I close it and reopen it, that's a version. Or if I stop working on it for a period of time and then come back to it, it will have created its own little version for that. And then once you're ready to start collaborating, you can click to share. So when you start to share, I'm not going to go too much into the details of share because I've got a session tomorrow, because share is quite a big thing, and how to share more effectively is important. But I'm going to start to share the file. I'm going to add in some names of people that specifically I want to share with. I'm just going to put some people that are sat nearby. I'm not expecting them to do anything. It's just to show you how to do this. So it's going to send them a message to say that I've now shared the file with them. So that file now has the ability for those two people to start coming in and editing and collaborating on that file with me. And once people are opening in that file with you at the same time, you get a notification in the top right-hand corner to say that somebody else has come into that file. We've probably seen that in some of the Excel spreadsheets that we work on. You'll get either their a small icon with their profile picture or their initials if they've not got a photo loaded up. And you can move your mouse cursor over those people, and it will then show you where they're editing in that file. It will show you the cell reference in an Excel spreadsheet, or in a Word document. You can click to jump to where they are, and you'll see a visual indication of where they are in the file and where they're editing. And again, we've got the same features where we can do commenting. I can't do a chat, that conversation piece, because this file doesn't exist within a team in a channel, but I can start adding comments again, and I can add to share with more people. And again, you can @mention people in those comments so they get their notifications. And if you @mention somebody that hasn't got permissions, it will then grant permission to that person so they can come and see that file. And then if you want to come along and you want to understand what changes have happened, so I'm just going to close this down. Let's continue editing in the online version. So it's just going to refresh that for me. So we can see it's got that edit on here. And now I'm just going to make some changes. Let's give that a highlight in green. So that's going to auto save for me. I'm now going to jump back to my documents because I've made those changes. And then I'm going to close that down, jump back into the document. Education brochure. Let's open that back up. So because we did that autosave, it's got those track changes automatically turned on. So now if I wanted to go and look at any previous versions, I can just go up to File, into Info, which is automatically gone to on for me. Sometimes you need to select Info, and then you've got the version history, so you can view and restore to previous versions. So if I click on that, it's now going to bring up all the different versions of that particular file. So it'll date them and timestamp them, so I can see the original version and here. So if I click on this version here, it's then going to show me that version of the file. Here it is. It's telling me it's a previous version, so I can copy the content from this version, or I can save it as a separate file, or there's a compare option. So if there's a lot of changes, you can click compare and it'll open 2 versions of the file for you in a split view to be able to look at, or I can click restore. And if I click restore, that will then move that version. So say for example, that was version 2, and I was currently on version 4, that then promotes that version up to version 5. So you haven't lost those other versions. It just makes this the latest version. So you've still got that, that audit trail of all that other work that has happened. And then again, you can start working on these when you're in the commute. If you've got the apps on your mobile device, you can open up the application on your mobile device, and you can do pretty much all of the things that we've just been talking about here. You can make edits, you can review the comments, you can look at the version control, you can be productive and work through those files as well. So then the last thing that I was going to cover off is meetings. So various stats at the moment. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Quick question.
Yep.
So before we did all this decommissioning, Mike Exxon, we were doing stuff on Teams,
yep.
and he was editing stuff locally, which he had synced, and we often had conflicts and funny files that get created. So how reliable is it working like that?
It depends the version of Office that was being used on his local machine, because if you don't have the Office 365 or the Office 2016 or newer versions, then it's not that compatible with the collaboration editing. So as long as you're on O365 2016 or higher, that whole integration piece works really well. And if you are working on a file and you're offline, it's tracking those changes that you're doing whilst offline. And if somebody else has made changes at the same time, when it comes to merging those files, it does highlight the differences in those. So you can go in and have a look at the compare option to see the changes that have happened.
Okay. Yeah, it's just I think at least a couple of times he'd been editing the files, and then it saved it with a file name that looked like some sort of terminal ID for him.
Okay.
It just sort of broke a bit. That was all.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's probably possibly not the latest version of Office that was probably causing the issues, or possibly the offline online editing sort of thing. So it's always worth just double checking how that's happening and what's going on. But how we've always used it, in my experience, it's been fine as long as everybody's on the latest sort of versions.
Okay, cheers.
So we're going to talk about meetings. So meetings, various different stats. We spend at least 50%, maybe 80% of our time in meetings of one form or another, formal meetings, ad hoc meetings. So I think, there is this definite process at the moment of thinking about a meeting in its three phases. You've got the pre-meeting, in-meeting, and post-meeting, and you're now able to kind of bring all of that sort of together in one sort of set of views in Teams. So where you can, try and schedule your meetings through the calendar in Teams. I know a lot of us are just used to using Outlook, but I think this is pretty much the same functionality, if not a little bit better in this. So in the calendar view on Teams, you can choose new meeting, and you're able to pretty much the same sort of functionality within Outlook that you're used to. So you give it a title. You can choose a physical location where to meet. So if you need a meeting room, if not, by default, it puts the Teams meeting invitation in there, so people can click the link to join. If you've got the dial-in option for your account, it'll add that dial-in option as well. You can choose the start and end time, the repeating. You can look at the scheduling assistant for other people that you've added to see when people are free and not free. So let's say this is for Monday at let's kind of go for 10:30. And if I start to add people that sort of are sitting around me, you'll see it's going to tell me automatically the status of that person. So are they busy or available based on their calendar entry? And it's even suggesting a better time based on the availability of the people that I want to invite. So again, the more people you add in, the more it will restrict down the possibilities of time to add people to the meeting. So that's a good way to, at a glance, see, based on the time that you've selected, and then you can click to change that time. And you can see now, I can see that meeting time works for those 3 people that I've added in. Can add the usual information into here. So add your agenda, any information. And if you insert any links to files from within O365, so a OneDrive or a SharePoint file in here, it will ensure that the permissions for those attendees of that meeting have the rights to be able to view that content. The other option that you have, which is new because you're looking at scheduling a meeting through Teams, is you can choose to meet in a channel in a team. So your attendees need to have the correct permissions for that team, but you can choose to meet in a particular channel, which is what we're doing for this training session right now. But what I like about that is, I'm just going to close and cancel out of here. So once you've done that and sent that invite, everybody gets the usual email invitation to the meeting as usual. But once you've got the meeting in a channel, you then get this conversation. So you can see this is the one we're in right now. So it's automatically telling me against the channel there's a meeting in progress because I've got the little camera icon. So it's telling me there's a meeting taking place in that channel right now. So if you've got permissions to join that channel, anybody can come along and join that meeting. So it's that kind of people meeting in a physical room, and you walk past and your whole team's in there, and you think, oh, maybe I should be in there. I'll pop my head in and I can join. That's the same sort of concept with this. People that have are a member of that team and that channel, they can see who's in the meeting, how long it's been going for. They can see that I'm recording the session at the moment, and they can click join and join in. But it keeps all the content for that meeting here as well. So if we'd started in the meetings, let me get the meeting back up. If we'd started with meeting notes, show meeting notes, this would have any agenda that I'd added in, and we can start making notes. So it's going to create a notes tab for me. To distribute links. Can I add in here? Yes, I can. I can even tag myself. So it's kind of a good way of keeping everything in the meeting. You can have the chat that we're used to having as well, and it's all wrapped up as part of that meeting entity in that channel because I chose to have the meeting in the channel. So if I just close out these meeting notes, it's automatically saving everything. So if I come back into Teams, you can see I was mentioned in get out of the way, in the notes for that meeting, and it's automatically all in there. And this is a really good way of keeping it all together for that meeting, because it's in that channel, it's all in that thread of conversation. The meeting recording belongs to this, so the previous ones that I've done, the meeting recording exists with that meeting. Any messages that people have posted are in there, any attachments. So it's, you know, rather than having to remember or attach it, I mean, people don't always attach files to a meeting invite. They send them out separately in an email chain, and you can never remember where they are, what's the latest version, etc., etc. And then once you're in the meeting like we are, we can, you know, start sharing files and folders, screen sharing, we can record it, we can edit the files together. And then once the meeting finishes, we can still keep in touch through this entry card that we've got for that meeting. So you can follow up at the end of the meeting with, you know, actions and notes and anything else that's going on. And if it's a recurring meeting, it looks slightly different. Let me see if I can quickly find a good example of that. Digital Squad. So if you have a recurring meeting, so this particular recurring meeting, this is our daily stand-up every day, and it has a separate entry. So you can see, you know, when that meeting started, how long it lasted for, who the attendees were, and then it keeps in chronological order if there's any comments or notes that happen. So Gareth shared a link here, so that's in that particular session of the meeting, and you can, you know, you can go back and see that. So that's again how recurring meetings track that. So it's one card for the recurrence as well. And that's pretty much, you know, kind of how the meetings work. And, you know, taking that elements that we'd spoken about before, where you've got your file, you know, I've created a file on my desktop. I've got it to a point where I'm now happy to start sharing it with people. I've shared it out with the right people to collaborate on. I've got it up in the cloud saved. I've then scheduled a meeting. I might have added people to the meeting, added that file to the meeting. Everybody can then see and view and collaborate on that file. It then becomes attached to that meeting. So even though it might be saved on my OneDrive, it's then available to people through that meeting tile. You can then do all the chat and the commenting and editing on that file in real time or in your own time. And then, you know, you can continue to have that conversation post meeting. You know, sometimes, you know, have a one-off meeting, but you might still have activities that go on for a number of weeks or months after that meeting that you need to follow up with, and you can just keep it within that particular, you know, that conversation thread for that meeting. So that's everything for meetings as well. So try to cover that off quite quickly. I'll stop the recording there, and then we can just jump into any deeper Q&As.